A coach who knows the game can teach their team how to improve. But one who genuinely cares about each player
You have what it takes. We got this.
can inspire them to win. At Truist, we believe the same is true for banking. Because when you work with someone who knows a lot and cares even more, you're unstoppable. Truist, leaders in banking, unwavering in care. Start feeling unstoppable. Visit truist.com/care. Truist Bank, member FDIC, leading based on top 10 U.S. commercial bank. A musician with technical knowledge can play all the right notes. But one who cares enough to play from the heart gives music soul. At Truist, we believe the same is true for banking. Because when you work with someone who knows a lot and cares even more, you're unstoppable. Truist, leaders in banking, unwavering in care. Start feeling unstoppable. Visit truist.com/care. Truist Bank, member FDIC, leading based on top 10 U.S. commercial bank. A coach who knows the game can teach their team how to improve. But one who genuinely cares about each player
You have what it takes. We got this.
can inspire them to win. At Truist, we believe the same is true for banking. Because when you work with someone who knows a lot and cares even more, you're unstoppable. Truist, leaders in banking, unwavering in care. Start feeling unstoppable. Visit truist.com/care. Truist Bank, member FDIC, leading based on top 10 U.S. commercial bank.
Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barrero's Top 5 at 5.
It's that time again. As I said, we'll get to Kessler at the bottom of the hour. You might be a little rusty in the top 5. You were out of town yesterday with your Golden Gopher women's team. Are you up for it today, you think?
Only time will tell, Davey.
That's true.
As I say every time, only time will tell. We mentioned with Mace, the beauty of Mace's segment today, to let listeners in on the bit, and you can confirm this, he didn't even allow us to get to the bit we wanted to do with him because he just jumped the gun and not only brought up that former Gopher center Greg Esslinger has been inducted or will be inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame,
right?
But he also did the second part of the bit that we predicted he would do about 2:35 today, which was then complain that he's not in some non-existent Minnesota Ring of Honor. So we spent a lot of time on Esslinger today, making the College Football Hall of Fame. But there's a couple other local angles, Dan, that are part of this class. Yes. Jim Kleinsasser, North Dakota, also will go in December 9th, 2025. And Blake Elliott. Do you remember Blake Elliott?
Barely.
St. John's legend.
Oh, yeah.
On the national championship team in 2003, then hung with the Vikings for a little while.
Yes.
But those are the local angles. Saban, it was announced last week, is going in. Urban Meyer was announced today. He's going in. Michael Strahan, Michael Vick, and a bunch of others. But I thought we'd mention the local angles because Mace just made it all about Esslinger, which is well-deserved. And then all the other guys that he thinks...
And it has nothing to do with him.
No, it's about those kids.
It's about the kids. It's not about
adults.
Mace being the coach.
Right.
And then reminding everybody what a great rushing team they were.
They led the Big Ten back-to-back years.
2 straight seasons, but that has nothing to do with it.
You know what I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to slow his roll. What if the M Club Hall of Fame, because Matt Spates apparently is not in that, which I'm sure he will be soon. What if the M Club Hall of Fame called Mace and said, "It's time, Glenn. We want to induct you into the M Club Hall of Fame"? Would Mace reject the nomination and the induction and saying, "I'm only going in if Matt Spates and others get there"?
It's a good question. Maybe we save that for next week.
Might have to
try to put him in the box there. My gut tells me he would say no. I'll take the honor, but I may not be giving Mace enough credit. Who's to say?
Maybe he'd say, "I'll use this opportunity to speak on all those that aren't in that should be."
He's got the bully pulpit at that point. People will be listening to him, and he'll be in front of a big, interested audience.
Your Minnesota Timberwolves back in action tonight. You can hear the game on the Timberwolves channel of your iHeartRadio app. I hope you all took our advice last week and made sure that your app was updated, the free iHeartRadio app, and used one of your preset options for the Timberwolves channel. Because if you did that, it's extremely easy to open the app tonight, hit the channel, listen to Alan Horton, Cal Soderquist, and the gang as the 21-18 Minnesota Timberwolves welcome the 19-20 Golden State Warriors to Target Center tonight. I haven't seen any definitive injury reports for tonight because it's an 8:30 tip. Usually they come out right about now because the tips are at 7, but it's an 8:30 tip. The only thing I saw in Maryland yesterday as I was just in the hotel all day getting ready for the game, besides Sam Darnold getting sacked 50 times, was the Steve Kerr press conference where he basically walked off and said, yeah, we don't like being under 500, but we got to figure it out.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Because they're 19-20 now. Yeah. They've lost 2 in a row, and things are not going well for them. So the tip is tonight, 8:30. The Wolves, right now, tied, I guess, somehow with the Los Angeles Lakers in terms of their 12 games back at first place, but they're in the 8th seed spot of the Western Conference playoffs.
Yeah, we mentioned that the night the Vikings were laying an egg, the Wolves were playing terribly at Washington, and then they rectified it enough in the fourth. Anthony Edwards had a big fourth quarter as well, and they take care of business, but not in a way that would indicate the level of seriousness with which they approached things a year ago. And as we also talked about earlier, they are about to embark on a pretty challenging part of the schedule, right? At Golden State tonight is a game you should win. The Warriors beat us here right before Christmas. And then we've got the Knicks, although interesting wrinkle there. Karl Anthony Towns is missing tonight's New York game because he's got a thumb issue.
Yeah.
Whether that might be extended into when the Wolves play them again. This game is at the Garden, I assume.
It is.
I don't know, but then after that, we go to Cleveland, correct, to take on the Cavaliers? Or
Cleveland comes here.
Oh, Cleveland's here. Yep. Okay. Cleveland, is Cleveland best record or Okie City? They're both, 1-2. They played each other last week. It was a hell of a tussle of a matchup.
Cleveland is the best record, 34-5. Oklahoma City is 33-6.
Wow. We also talked about the fact that the Wolves have been very mediocre at home. Now, you could say, well, they have been kind of mediocre on the road, too, but it stands out more because a year ago, they were 30-11 at home. Not their best record, by the way. One of the Garnett years, we finished 31-10 at home, but pretty close. This year, thus far, we're basically 500 at home. We're a 10-8 club. So you start with trying to get back some feel that home is a difficult place for the other teams to play, because it really, quite frankly, hasn't been. And then you're in the meat grinder part of the schedule where you're playing a bunch of very legitimate teams. It can go two ways. It can be we're further exposed, or it can be this is where we kind of come together, figure this stuff out, and give people the impression that better days are just ahead.
Speaking of Cleveland and Oklahoma City, they actually play tomorrow night in OKC as well. They played last week. You mentioned it, 129-122. It was an awesome game on a Wednesday night. They'll play on a Thursday night tomorrow, the two best teams in the NBA, Cleveland and Oklahoma City. It's an 8 o'clock tip on Saturday, I guess it is. Not Monday, Saturday.
Okay.
And I think that's part of the ML King weekend.
I see. Okay.
And that's why it's an 8 o'clock tip, I believe. So that is coming up on Saturday night. Where did I want to go next? Your Minnesota Wild. They're back in action tonight right here on the Fan. Everybody got excited today because at morning skate, Kirill Kaprizov was out there on the side. Brock Faber was out there on the side. For Kirill, it's his first skate with the team since before Christmas break, which is something to think about. Kaprizov and Faber will not play tonight. Lauko will not play tonight. Gus Bus is in the net as the Wild puck drop is 7:30 tonight. A little bit later, 7:30. I can only imagine that is on national TV. It is TNT. So as Fallness would say, mute the TV and listen to him.
Louis is trying, I think, to maybe motivate the fourth line. He's concerned about the lack of production there. Maybe tonight's the night that some of that can be accomplished against a nice little ball club.
I think that's a good place to straddle.
It is a very good place to straddle. We have Kessler, as I mentioned, coming up at 5:30 or so. Let's talk conspiracy theories. There are two conspiracy theories in the world of sports I want to address. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it, but I do think we need to clear the air on both of them. Stay tuned.
Join Nordo, Eric Nordquist this Saturday, 7 p.m., Tom's Watch Bar, downtown Minneapolis. It's a KFAN Wild Watch Party. They'll have all the games live on the big screens. It's a cool place to watch, including your hometown hockey team, delicious food, drinks, your chance to secure exclusive KFAN merchandise. All the details at KFAN.com, keyword calendar. Go hang with Nordo Saturday, Tom's Watch Bar, for a KFAN Wild Watch Party.
Zach writes, how much do you guys hate that the Vikings lost? It must be a lot harder to do a radio show, LOL. It's not our first rodeo. We've had to deal with the abyss this early many, many times. But Sometimes earlier, exactly right, as recently as a year ago. Would we prefer that the playoff window be extended for seasonal boost purposes? Yeah. I mean, as we've talked about before, it doesn't even have to be cheerleading for the team so much as having a good story play out that does more easily help you fill the 3.5-hour tour. And today, for the second straight day, we're going the distance. You mentioned we're out at 6 tomorrow, correct, for Golden Gopher men's basketball. But yeah, no, it's
good for business.
We don't like it at all. It's good for business, and I think it's good for storytelling because there's generally some good angles that can develop. This week, it would obviously be dealing with Eagles week, and the history isn't very good in Philadelphia in the playoffs, of course, for the Minnesota Vikings. But there would have been a lot of good ground, one would think, to cover. I'm very curious to see what the Rams do with the opportunity. I think the Eagles destroyed them early in the season. That was a game in L.A. I'm intrigued by the L.A. defense. I didn't love the way the Eagles' offense looked against Green Bay. I don't think Stafford... I mean, the weird thing about the Rams' offense is it kind of fell off the edge of a cliff late in the season, but they kept winning because their defense was damn good.
Yeah.
And so I think that defense could give Philly a little bit of trouble, the way they run offense. We'll have to see. But that's an example of a story. There'd be angles related to the Vikings and Eagles that we could be discussing, instead of perhaps, how do you project what the what the Rams might be able to do against them. Would Gaardsy accept an invite to the Churchill Room without you? Would he leave you on the dock while he heads out on Mace's boat? My guess is you would, and I wouldn't be offended if you did. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't, have my feelings hurt.
I don't think I would.
You don't think you would?
No.
You think it's a package deal?
I think I would ask, is Dan coming?
Yeah.
Is Dan invited, or can I invite Dan?
That's possible.
I also know you wouldn't really want to go.
No, I wouldn't. I just want to be asked.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I know 100%. You well enough to know kind of the game there.
Right. Lawyer Tom, don't know why Mace had to take that shot at Mike Tice with the hire the tight ends coach to be head coach crack. Seemed unnecessary.
I hope that's funny.
I think he intended it for Brewster, but I guess, maybe he meant Mike Tice. I don't know.
Now, Ticey was technically offensive line coach when he was elevated, right?
That's true.
Because I really want to split hairs on this one and make sure we follow the facts.
Correct. Well, he's had several different jobs.
Yeah, since then.
Did he ever call plays?
Yeah, for the Bears,
For the Bears, yeah, he did. That's exactly right.
That was the moment.
So, because I don't remember, I don't think Tim Brewster has ever called plays other than in the Hoosier Heartland Conference, high school football.
Which, as you recall, he told us in his Charlotte press conference was maybe his favorite job ever.
That might have been,
because he had a nun.
He won some games, I think.
There was a nun that didn't care about his football program and wanted his kids to go to class, and he told a great story, and I'm trying to build a football program here.
Two conspiracy theories to attempt to bash and to mock and to ridicule, if at all possible, here in our remaining minutes this segment. One involves your guy, Lou Holtz, who apparently today said, if Notre Dame doesn't win the national championship, it's because we want to save Ryan Day's job. Now,
excuse me?
The implication seems to be that the football gods, and maybe even the football zebras, and maybe even the people who run college football, are going to subtly try to send a message to all who might have to make some important decisions during that game that, come on, let's make this thing, let's make this Ohio State negativity go away for one Ryan Day. That was fairly outlandish one, I thought.
Yeah, what is Lou Holtz thinking?
I don't know. Well,
are we sure it's not a Lou Holtz burner?
It could be. It wouldn't. This came from an X handle called the Silver Bulletin.
Oh boy!
So which is listed as an Ohio State news service serving as your trusted source for comprehensive coverage. So,
well, I hope that's true.
To that extent, then they're offering it up apparently. A Notre Dame news service would be the one to offer it up as bulletin board material,
right?
I guess for the Fighting Irish,
right?
But that one caught my attention. And
well, remember, they have history, Holtz and Day. Do you remember that?
No.
Holtz, at some point, said something along the lines of Ohio State is soft.
Oh, that's right.
And then I think, Ryan, I think they must have beaten Notre Dame because I think they've played in the last few years. I don't know off the top of my head. But when Ryan Day was talking to the sideline reporter after the game, he basically did, where's Lou Holtz at? I don't know where he is right now, but that's not
you're
soft.
Right. I do remember that now.
Ohio against everybody and the whole thing. So they've got a little bit of weird history.
Well, if he really said it, I don't mind it as a tweak, a little snark from Lou. But what's sad is there are people who are going to remember this. Notre Dame fans are going to remember this and say, that's interesting because I saw a couple calls that I really wondered. I mean, so is it all ordained for Ohio State? Now, along those same lines, we got a lot of this before the Vikings-Rams game, and there's been some muted muttering about it after the game. And it goes something like this. Yeah, the Vikings didn't play all that well, but let's be honest. They didn't have a chance. Because the league really wants an LA-based team to make a run here. And so if there's some ways to kind of facilitate that and to tweak that, like reversing that 7 points, scoop and score for the Vikings, we're going to go ahead and do it. Sadly, some of those individuals listen to the Bumper to Bumper program.
Is that right?
I believe it. You could put me into the classification of you need to get out more if you really believe that's why the Vikings lost that game. Now, that's different from saying that all things being equal, it's a feel-good story with obviously unspeakable tragedy in its background, right? In California, Southern California, that continues to play out. We may even have a guest on this subject tomorrow or Friday. Now that, there's no football beast on Friday. But it's an example, I guess, of how people can lie to themselves for the sake of, I guess, cushioning the blow. Oh, are you kidding me? The league's they're not going to pass up on this sort of story and it becoming a story that over the course of time, especially if the Rams make it to the NFC title game or somehow make it all the way to the Super Bowl, that they want to make sure of that. So the implication is calls will be changed and will be made to accommodate it. Please stop doing it to yourself, especially with the way I was hoping it would get more muted after the game because of the way the Vikings lost, even if you hated the reversal of the call. But probably that call, for those who want to believe that knucklehead conspiracy stuff, they probably feel emboldened because they go, well, at the very least, like you said, it should have been intentional grounding.
Yep.
In which case, we still wouldn't have scored more than one touchdown.
We might have gotten a safety.
Maybe we would have gotten a safety. That's
Not
true.
sure.
That's very true. But you heard that one, right? Because I heard it before the game.
I definitely heard it before the game. I didn't like our chances just because of the and I picked the Vikings, of course, but there's always a danger of the team that's playing for something bigger than themselves. The stories do.
There's no question.
There's no question.
There's no question.
And you don't want to say it. You don't want to be insensitive to the whole thing, but it's fact.
It's very factual. You never know. It's hard to calculate. And as I said, I'm sure the league, to that extent, would say, well, this could be a hell of a story for us. You don't want to admit it for the reason you just laid out. It's just so awkward. Because you can't even begin to go down the road of celebrating. Oh, we got a lucky break here, because people have lost their lives. Towns have been decimated, and it goes on. There's still a couple fires that they're having some difficulties with. But to go down that road of, well, yeah, it's ordained now. They've got to. And the calls are going to indicate it. The unofficial memo has gone out, please. I mean, it's just, you take the tin foil off the rabbit ears and the antenna and hit cable or DirecTV or start streaming or start doing something else. The scoop and score I can live with. The retroactive face mask was inexcusable. Well, that's a good point. We did not talk about that. on air. I have to tell you, unless I missed it, that part did feel unprecedented to me. In fact, I should have talked about it. I should have asked Seifert about it. I didn't even know you could do that.
I know.
Because it almost sounded like that came from the, what do they call the replay? The
replay assist.
Replay assist?
Yeah.
I didn't think replay assist could create a penalty. Did you? And I think it was a legitimate face mask.
It definitely was.
But
yes.
I thought the rule had to be, well, if there's a flag.
Yeah.
Not because what it looked like happened was Stafford starts pointing. And then the refs start talking.
Right.
No flag, I thought, was ever dropped, right? Now, we've had late flags drop, for example, on intentional grounding, although not in the case of your
pass interference. There's a lot of late ones. You know, when JJ flails
that
both
was a little
up.
bit strange, but
it was, wasn't it, Dan? It was a little strange.
It was a little strange.
That Stafford could just orchestrate a penalty seemingly out of nowhere that nobody saw.
Do you think any other team a quarterback of any other team could have done that?
Oh, Jared Goff.
Based on any other city?
Jared Goff had his way with the officials when we played him on Sunday night, too.
Very, very true.
He got to point out a few things.
Very, very true, Davey. And lastly, we are reminded by lawyer Tom, how did we not get a blocked punt in that game? That's another sneaky, underrated one.
Yes.
I've never seen a muffed block like that in the history of football. Have you?
Well, not only that, but that it wasn't coupled with a roughing the punter.
Yes, right.
How did he do neither?
He did neither, yeah. It was remarkable.
How did he not block it, nor...
Well, I think the punter was clever. I think he could see he was in trouble. It was almost like he hesitated enough where it threw off the timing. Who was it? It was...
Bruiser Hill?
Bruiser Hill, exactly. Yeah. That it threw off his timing a little bit. I think we should give incredible credit to that punter because I think his hesitation is odd as it sounds. Because I think if he'd have punted on schedule with the usual timing, it would have been blocked. But I almost think he hesitated a beat, and the would-be punt blocker, went by him a little bit, at which point then he got the ball under him. It was very strange.
We got all offseason to talk about it.
You are correct. We've got plenty of conversation to get into, including some breaking international news with Pat Kessler. He is back in studio today. Questions or comments for him, hit the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line or the listen line, the talkback line, 64686.
I wish the American media would take a great look at the views of the people in Congress and find out, are they pro-America or anti-America?
Pat Kessler.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
I can't trust Obama. He's an Arab.
Pat Kessler.
Tear down this wall.
I did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport.
Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Pat Kessler. And now, to help Dan break down all the tough questions in politics, it's our own Pat Kessler political wonk.
I feel like a supermodel, except like times 10.
It's Channel 4's Pat Kessler with Dan Barrero on the Fan.
It is indeed that time again. Mr. Kessler is back with us. You can reach him and us at 64686, the Bradshaw Brian KFAN text line. You can hit the talkback line, right? Gaardsy, it's not illegal. You can monitor that. Go to KFAN.com, click on the microphone. You have up to 30 seconds to make whatever point you might be
Can't wait to hear that.
attempting to make. That
I might just send a few directly to Kessler.
You could do that too. That'd be another way to go. Yeah, that's
just one more way to rip me.
That's it. Yeah, well, you're used to it.
I know. I am.
You've been living it for decades, so it's nothing new there.
Yep.
Let's get to. There's a lot to get to, obviously, in St. Paul, but first, let us get to the breaking news regarding an agreement to cease fire between Hamas and Israel, as well as a hostage deal. Is this flat out done, or is this like 99% done? What transpired today? How has this story been advanced?
You know, it's 99.99% done. It is incredible. It's great news before Biden leaves office and Trump takes office. Both of them, and to me, this is very heartening. President Biden and President Trump worked together to get this deal done. I think that is fantastic. So Israel and Hamas have agreed to a deal that would end the fighting in Gaza. lead to the release of some of the hostages right away, as early as Sunday, and the Hamas will release many of the hostages, 33 we understand, right away over next period of about 3 weeks. And Israel will release hundreds and hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Starts on Sunday. It's going to be very difficult to untangle. As you know, President Trump takes office on Monday. They're going to try to get all of this done before Biden leaves office. But that is the fantastic news after 440 days or something like that of hostages after this terrible terrorist attack and then the Israeli response. This may be beginning to wind down. Great news.
So let me see if you agree with this analysis. This is via the New York Times, one of their opinion writers. He writes this: thanks largely to Trump, a deal demanded by the Israeli left and reviled by the right is about to come into effect. A year's worth of diplomacy by the Biden White House is finally about to bear fruit on account of its political nemesis. So there's two parts of that I want you to comment on. One, the Trump factor, whether that's legit, and two, is it true that this is actually that Trump then, if you accept him as being part of this deal, that this is a deal that the right, the Israeli right, is against, and it's actually, this has been a deal that's been demanded, according to this analysis, by the Israeli left, and that the right side of the aisle in Israel might well soon be disenchanted with Trump because of his participation in the terms of this specific deal.
There are so many parts of this, including whether or not Israel has to withdraw completely from Gaza. So that is still what they're kind of debating in the Israeli government right now. I think it's absolutely fair and valid to give President Trump credit for helping to bring this about, in part because Trump wanted, in fact, to have this over with before he takes office. It is going to be a big ceasefire before he takes office. However, holding up to keep the ceasefire, keep it from exploding again in the Middle East is going to be very, very difficult. Getting the rest of the hostages home is also going to be difficult. It's absolutely true that the Israeli right did not want this, did not want to withdraw, wanted to keep pressing forward to completely wipe Hamas off. But President Trump and his Mideast advisor, who has been negotiating with Qatar and the Biden administration, all of these people work together to try to get this done. President Trump wants this. Biden wanted it before he left office. So both are getting what they want. But it's still really difficult.
All right,
so it's pretty good. Yeah, it's great news.
It's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in the great state of Minnesota, especially in St. Paul. I don't know. I mean, what do we call it? You call it chaos, anger, dysfunction, and revenge as the 2025 Minnesota legislature convenes. Lay out what to this point. Yesterday was the day everybody's supposed to report, and obviously the Dems did not. So lay out what took place yesterday and developments in this story that seem to be taking us down a legal line that I assume is going to end up with the Minnesota State Supreme Court.
Yeah, it is already there. It's already ended there. As Glenn Mason earlier on the show said that in football, sometimes you go from the penthouse to the outhouse. Yeah. In the Minnesota legislature, they've gone from the state house to the courthouse. That is where this thing is. The Democrats refused to show up on opening day yesterday because they were trying to deny the Republicans enough votes to legally conduct business. The Secretary of State, ceremonial officer, gavelled them to order, said they did not have a quorum, enough votes to officially conduct business, and he gavelled them out of order, adjourned it. Here's what happened. Republicans moved forward anyway. They seized control all of their own without any Democratic votes. They elected a new speaker. with only Republican votes, 67 to donut is what it was. Now the Democrats are challenging.
I see what you did there.
You see what I did?
Yeah.
What was the score of the big
41 donut, 41. Which was the anniversary was yesterday.
Yeah, pretty good.
Vikings Giants.
67 donut is the new Republican Speaker of the House, first one in a number of years. So the Democrats are challenging this as a sham illegal takeover, and they went to court today, went to the Supreme Court to say that the court should declare the Republican-only session illegal. Another twist today, the Secretary of State said he was conducting his official duties. He was going to go to the legislature every day to convene them until they had a quorum, but he was told by Republicans if he came to the chamber, he would be denied entry. Denied. So I don't know if that would be physical,
right?
Which would be awesome if it came to
You'd
that.
love to cover that.
I really would.
Yeah.
I'd love to be covering this. Very few things that I'd want to cover since I left. This is one of them. This would be fantastic. So this is there's a new Republican speaker. The Democrats have abandoned they have vacated. They have not shown up like other legislatures in other states. This has never happened here. As a matter of fact, the Democrats, the DFLers, met secretly on Sunday night just to get sworn in, which is
by our guy Kevin Burke, a frequent guest over the years of the Bumper to Bumper program, former Hennepin County judge, correct?
Yeah, and the Republicans are saying it's illegal. You tell Kevin Burke that. The chief judge. I mean, come on, tell him that.
Sure. Well,
it was very weird that they had a secret ceremony privately. Only family was invited. I'm not saying it's the law that they have to do it in public, but they didn't want anybody to know. And my question is why? What difference does it make?
Right.
Just be forthright, transparent, be aggressive, do what you want to do. But to deny the public this view of them getting sworn in, I thought was strange.
This is I put this into the general classification of everybody looks bad for different reasons, and it's a bad look for a state that historically wants to present itself as we're different here. We're good
government.
Exactly. And this is embarrassing, I think. My idea would be this, and you know me, I've always been a dreamer, right? And I'm not the only one.
You're not the only one.
In my dream, the DFLers show up for work because that's what they're supposed to do. And yeah, probably the Republicans are going to try to put some stuff by them. But then at the point where we have this other election, for the seat that was likely to be a DFL seat,
tied.
and we're back to tied.
67,
right.
Yeah.
Then at that point, the Republicans have to agree to a new, power sharing agreement that's what in a rational world each side would do. And by the way, the Democrats didn't show up, and the Republicans haven't even confirmed that when that date comes, they are willing to go back to a power sharing agreement. The way that I think there's some signs of that in the Senate side, right? That there is some rationality in the Senate?
It's duckies and bunnies over in the Senate.
Yes.
I mean, they've all worked together. They said instead of having a WWE match, one senator said, we have an escape room where we can all be calm and serene. And that's what's happening over in the Senate. So it's fine over there, even though it is tied.
Right. Yeah, right. Good point. Yeah.
From the death of a senator in December.
Right.
So the House was supposed to have an agreement. This is what has ticked off the Democrats so much. They were supposed to have a power sharing agreement until it was 67-67, until a judge threw it out.
Yeah, which you have to, I think, abide by.
So the question is, Democrats, you shouldn't have put that guy up who didn't live in the district.
That's another point.
But the Democrats claim, and, they can make a valid claim, that Republicans are trying to seize control
yes, they are.
Of the legislature.
I wonder why they'd want to be
2 years
in hardcore revenge mode.
And that's where they are. For 2 years, for a majority for that is only going to last 2 weeks, because the election's in 2 weeks. It'll be tied again. And this is where it's going to be.
Well, I'm naive to think that then, okay, you got your 2 weeks, get past get through what you can, but then at the end of the 2 weeks, when it's back to tied, you have to accept the fact that it's tied. I would argue you also have to accept the idea that, is it Tabke?
Yes.
Who's the
Brad
one?
Tabke.
Yeah, there was like, there were like, I think,
Shakopee.
24
There were 20
ballots. Was it 20?
20 ballots.
That were not counted. And
They were thrown out.
They were thrown out. Okay. And so there's a question about that because it was a very close race. But as I understand it, I know this isn't binding, but there was a court ruling there that said it's fine. There's this result should not be thrown out. That also, I believe the Republicans should abide by. But I know
the Republicans are saying they might not seat this guy, even though the court has ruled that it was a valid election.
Yes.
Now, I will say this: you've got court and legal stuff, but the legislature, that government, that branch of government, has the right to seat or unseat whoever they want for whatever reason they want. That's what the Republicans are arguing. So they might have a permanent majority, but in any event, after years, especially the last 2 years, where all of this stuff got just jammed down their throats without any participation, with all the lefty liberals. Yeah, I mean, it was about as wild a left-wing agenda as you could possibly see, and they passed it without listening to the Republicans.
Yeah, at all. That's part of the accusation, at least. Yeah. Well, it's embarrassing, is it not? I mean, on a larger sense, it's just a bad look. It really is for a state, like I said, that gets a lot of very arrogant about how we're more civilized and we do things and we know what we're doing and we do.
Whatever happened to the cover of Time magazine where the good life in Minnesota? What has happened?
You tell me, as someone who covered politics there forever, what happened to the ability to at least find legislators who, I'm not saying you have to give up your principles, but have regular conversations with those on the other side and in an attempt to get some kind of bipartisan stuff there, because this same complaint is registered in Washington all the time. Mm-hmm. I remember talking to Joseph Califano, who I think was at the Jimmy Carter funeral. He got fired by Jimmy Carter from that administration as HEW guy. Yeah. And that was his biggest complaint was, look, man, you could say we were all in this too incestuously together, but he said you had Republicans and Democrats who would make deals. And that would mean sometimes you get more of what you want here, but to give up a little bit more of something, that's the way you have to do it. And that as we've gotten more polarized, we have less and less of that in Washington. And I feel like we have less and less of that in St. Paul.
A lot of this, according to people who watch the legislature, including myself, is that the Democrats have gone farther to the left. Republicans have gone farther to the right. And one of the things that I have noticed over the last decade or so is that the Republicans and Democrats never interact, never commingle. Their families don't get together. It used to be that you could fight like hell in committees or give speeches on the floor, and you leave the floor of the House and the Senate with your arms around each other's shoulders, and you go out to dinner. That is over. And it's a whole
it leads to the mistrust, right? I mean, and suspicion, and
it does. And I don't blame the Republicans. I mean, you can argue. I think they have some very valid arguments here. I'm not sure what the court is going to rule,
right?
But after years of pent up demand, they see an opening and they're going to take it.
Where the Dems had the trifecta, exactly.
Absolutely.
Lance in Chaska has a question for you. Since the elected officials from both major parties are not prepared and refusing to do their elected duties to recoup the losses to the state, will the state represent the people and garnish the campaign funds of both major parties? Now, he might be, being a little sarcastic there. I don't know, but how would that work?
It's actually a very good question. In that, should the Republicans say the Democrats should not be paid because they're not showing up for work? Democrats are arguing that they're at home, they're answering constituents, they're working on bills, they're doing all this stuff that it'll last a couple of weeks. I get what he is asking. But the legislature can pay itself and decide whether it should be paid. If there's a shutdown of government, that's a whole nother question.
Right.
Because remember, we got a budget here that they're going to have to put together and compromise on. And if there's no budget, then the state will shut down. Then you go into a whole different area where kids can't go to school, teachers don't get paid. Should legislators get paid? This is a little bit different because Republicans will argue, no, they should not get paid. Democrats say we're doing our job. So that's down the list, but still a very valid claim.
How quickly will the courts be? We're talking about the Supreme Court, correct?
The Minnesota Supreme Court.
How quickly in a situation like this are they likely to rule?
I think this is urgent. And in order for the state legislature to function, I think the court is, in fact, going to have to move fairly quickly. They do have the ability to move quickly when they need to on the Minnesota Supreme Court. And I believe this would be put on a fast track.
A bookseller guy asks, is a filibuster, is there such a thing in the state of Minnesota?
Well, there is. And as a matter of fact, the Democrats are boycotting the legislature right now in the House. And they claim, and they're not wrong, that last year, the Republicans had a filibuster, and they would do everything from reading from children's books on the floor to giving their recipe for their spouse's best hamburger. All of that kind of thing was happening in order to filibuster so that nothing could pass. So in effect, that had the same effect as what the Democrats are doing now, say the DFLers.
218 guy writes, Minnesota statutes. Quorum is majority of members who convene for session. Republicans win. Done deal. Bye-bye Dems.
I think that is an absolutely fair argument that the Republicans are making. We have the most people who are there, even if it's 67, 66. But the Democrats, the Secretary of State, who is the state's election leader, the Secretary of State of Minnesota, says that a quorum is 68 votes. You need 68 votes to pass a bill. So even if Republicans control the legislature, there's only 67 of them there, they can't do anything. You can't pass a bill with 67 votes. You need 68.
A source close to the program asks, how much of this is related to cutting lobbyists out of buying drinks and dinners? How frequently did they go out together
that is an awesome
and have
question.
to sit together and work things out?
That is an awesome question. So there are many people who complain that it is the ethics rules of the Minnesota legislature and other legislatures around the country that has stopped everybody from fraternizing. So you can't go out and have drinks and you got to pay for them out of your own pocket. You know, the lobbyists can't buy you something. I think the rules, and I don't know exactly what they are now, but let's say they're $25. Whereas before you could go out for a steak dinner and take 10 Republicans and Democrats out. It was different then.
You could take them to Buns and Roses and you just turn it in the expense report and it's fine. Well, it doesn't exist anymore.
Do they have good chicken wings?
They probably do. I'm guessing Buns and Roses.
What do you mean? It's the best buffet in town. Are you kidding me?
No question.
I forgot about that at an appearance a couple of weeks ago. Someone that worked at Rick's Cabaret swore that she remembers me back from KFAN events at Rick's Cabaret. She's like, no, you used to be there. I'm like, ma'am.
That wasn't you.
I'm sorry.
Of course. Wink, wink.
No. I don't think I've ever been to Rick's Cabaret.
Rick's name.
I don't think we've done fan appearances at Rick's in a while.
And then you pull her aside and say, you're not supposed to talk.
No, keep that on the QT. For sure.
So that kind of stuff used to happen all the time. You know, and government is cleaner, perhaps more transparent.
Right. But what are you losing in the process?
What do you lose? I mean, so do you change that?
You win the battle, maybe you lose the war.
Hank Helgen loved to bring Republicans and Democrats together in the Norseman suites until you guys blew that all up.
Great callback.
You brought them all together, Hank.
Yeah.
That's an awesome callback because that's how many people got around these ethics rules where you just, pass out tickets to the whole family. Here's throw some tickets to your kids, that kind of stuff.
Larry Mondello guy checks in.
Oh, great.
How many secret ceremonies has Kessler been part of? Do you care to comment on that?
Let's say many.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of secret ceremonies. I know
there's a lot of secret rooms. You know a bunch of them, right?
I know
the Capitol.
I know many, many, many secret rooms. Very disappointed when they renovated the Capitol at a cost of $350 million. And, they modernized everything, including getting rid of all of the back rooms and the little rabbit holes, everything.
All the interesting nooks and crannies that gave it character are gone.
Absolutely, yeah. So
they cleaned it up.
But I know all about it. Trust me.
Let's pause here. I want to get to a couple more texts, and then also we've got, as you mentioned, the inauguration is scheduled for Monday, correct?
That is true.
What interesting angles can we get into there? Kessler back, part 2, when we return here now. Lobbies just send the $10,000 directly to the PAC now. Why risk spending any money on the other side? That is from 218 guy calling back to our earlier conversation. Mark in Red Wing reminds us, and we hear this a lot, Reagan and Tip O'Neill battled during the day and they went to dinner at night. Now, I know the comeback to that is people say, well, yeah, because they're all in it together. You know, that's the thing, that in its own way is repugnant to a lot of people who do the old, there's insiders and outsiders. So I don't want to over romanticize back in the day.
Sure.
But I do think if you're elected, there's got to be some ability to broker deals. And this is part of what I've respected about Amy Klobuchar, frankly, is she, I think in many cases, you see her legislation or you see things she goes after, and there's often a Republican involved. And that doesn't solve all the problems, but I think there's something old school about, well, that's part of what I have to do. She's obviously a lefty, right? But I think she's pragmatic enough to say, I want to get some stuff done, right? And that is, I think, whatever you think of her, lefty or righty, you have to have a little bit more of that mentality.
So you've got to look more beyond the transactional nature of this business, where give me this and I'll give you this, because you've got to start thinking about what is it going to be in 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years when I need something really important. And one of the things that, for example, Amy Klobuchar, you bring her up, one of the things she does is she writes notes for birthdays of spouses and children.
And it sounds silly,
shows up.
but it's not.
It is absolutely the basis of everything. Now, the Minnesota Senate, I want to emphasize again, they're tied 33-33, and Mark Johnson, the Republican leader, and Aaron Murphy, the Democratic leader, understand this to some degree, that somebody is going to be in charge, and right now it's going to be Democrats, but it might be Republicans in the future. And let's remember from this last election that Republicans are gaining in this state. It's not Democrats who are swamping the political system here. The power of Democrats in Minnesota is waning, including that of Governor Tim Walz. And what is Walz's role in all of this going to be? That's going to be a key question going forward.
Let's get to a couple of other items that are on your list, definitely worthy of consideration. Let's stay national first. Well, these, I guess, are both national stories. Your guy, the Forest Lake native, Pete Hegseth.
Awesome.
He's, of course, been trying to get through some rather contentious confirmation hearings to see if he can run the Pentagon, correct?
Correct.
So how did it go? Where is he in the process? What are the critics suggesting at this point whether he has a realistic chance to pass?
Well, the Democrats say that in any other universe of the last 100, 200 years of American democracy, he would not be qualified to serve as the head of America's defense system. But there are a lot of people, not just in the Senate, but in America, who believe that Donald Trump should have the executive team around him that he wants. He selected Hegseth, Minnesota native, one of us, and this is a guy who is highly educated. He's a Fox News weekend anchor, but he's also a guy who served in combat in Iraq and has, as he says, dust on his boots, who actually saw combat. He claims that we need to change the culture, and he used the hearings, which were crazy. They were really, really harsh people attacking him, accusing him of public drunkenness, sexual assault, of misogyny, of financial mismanagement. And the Republicans say, what does that have to do with running an army, a defense system? Democrats say it's all about character. So he did survive this contentious hearing and doubled down on accusations that the military under Democrats, and particularly Biden, has become woke, whatever that means, DEI, and he blamed leftist media sources, and he's promising there will be a warrior culture at the Pentagon. I thought we had that now, but I think he's going to survive this at this point. It was pretty remarkable, despite how tough and harsh it was. I think he might survive it.
The local angle to the local angle. Norm Coleman factor. Where does he fit into this story?
It is tradition in the Senate that if there is a nominee to the cabinet, a home senator, the home state senator, would escort the nominee around. Now, Hegseth left Minnesota about 10 years ago. Coleman, of course, Norm Coleman still lives here, but he's a lobbyist for the Saudi Arabian government and the American Jewish Conference, I think. And he has been escorting Hegseth around the Senate, introducing him to members of the Senate. And there are many people say that he has eased the way for Hegseth and just done a hell of a good job trying to introduce him as a human being to a lot of these senators. Now, it's important to note that Norm Coleman was elected in the same freshman class as John Thune, who is now majority leader, and Lindsey Graham, who is a very prominent senator. So there's all of that going on. People say that Coleman may have a lot to do with the turnaround, because I think before Christmas, I think there was no way he was going to be the guy. I will say, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but he refused to meet or declined to meet or did not meet with a single Democratic senator. So that, again, raises this issue of polarization. He met only with Republican senators, and right now he only needs Republican votes. Not sure he has them all yet, but he's close.
All right, let's finish with the Trump inauguration, which, as you mentioned earlier, is on Monday.
Cannot wait.
Who's in, who isn't, and what are we hearing?
I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, remember that one 8 years ago, and then 4 years ago, of course, 4 years ago was the January 6th, the riots at the Capitol to certify. It was an armed camp around the inauguration 4 years ago when Biden was inaugurated. And in fact, Donald Trump refused to attend it. He was just beginning his claims then that the election was stolen, and he was going to fight it, and he flew off in Air Force One before the inauguration. So by all indications, Joe Biden will be there. Jill Biden will be there. Former presidents will be there. That's where we are right now. Michelle Obama will not be there. And a little mysterious. People, I suppose, could understand why she says, okay, the hell with this. I'm not going to do this anymore. When they go low, I go high. I'm done with that. I'm just not going to show up. We don't know the reason. I think some of the biggest guests and biggest tells of the next administration, you got Elon Musk, your guy Bezos, Zuckerberg is going to be there, Sam Altman is going to be there. So this is going to be the Tech Bros inauguration. It's going to be something.
Melania did not go to the White House with Donald to meet Biden. Is that correct?
That is true. So
does that mean anything necessarily?
Well, it's going to be a whole new, they're making up their own rules. And, some of it's good, I suppose, whatever, whatever they want to do. Sure. Why not? She claims that she wasn't treated well. She didn't go with Donald, she said, to the White House to meet with Jill Biden. Again, Joe is an institutionalist, a traditionalist. He believes that presidents should do this. But here's something I found interesting. Kamala did not invite J.D. Vance to the vice president's home, which is the Naval Observatory right outside of Washington. Did not invite him and his family. I found that a little odd.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking about polarization here in Minnesota. That's polarization. I don't know if she's upset with him. He did say a lot of mean things about her, and she about him. So, she didn't invite him, and that's probably not a good thing. Well, it isn't a good thing.
Let's finish with this text responding to what we were talking about earlier regarding getting things done at the Capitol or in Washington.
Yep.
A friend of mine worked for the late, great Jim Ramstad in D.C. She had some great stories of deals getting done at D.C. watering holes, a bygone era of lawmaking. And to that point, knew Ramstad very well. We had him on this show and Chad Barrero many times over the years. I was mentioning Joe Califano earlier. He thought part of it is you have to relish that game. You have to enjoy that game, and not everybody does, and maybe fewer and fewer people do. That there's folks who despise that part of it, but that the best politicians back in the day were ones who they kind of, you know what? I this is my lifeblood. I get oxygen. I get a high from this whole messy process of making deals.
And it's all about being friends with your counterpart and your counterpart's spouse and their kids. I mean, you're all in one thing together, and that is to make the country better, to make the state better. I think now a lot of politicians are in an echo chamber, and they don't get that. They hear each other, and they're reaffirmed and affirmed by everything they say. But yeah, Ramstad was one of those guys where they'd go
100%
to different places. Yep. And there are still some of those places in Minnesota, like the Lexington restaurant in St. Paul. A lot of people retire there late at night to make deals. But then you got to be a person of your word.
Dude, you definitely would know that place. You got your own table there, don't you?
What do you mean? You mean I got a picture on the wall? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, when we know that. You got a lot of stuff, don't you? I mean, come on, let's be honest.
Oh, you brought it up.
I did, didn't I? And you didn't mind it,
I did.
Glenn Mason. Yeah, actually, that's true.
Did they ask to have your picture, or did you just hang it one night?
Well, wow. You just have a few.
That sounds a little bit vicious there.
Wow, that's pretty tough. Yeah, go down there and take a look at it, everybody. You know how when Notre Dame football players or the Alabama players, let's say Alabama, they go out and they all touch the head of Bear Bryant on the statue before they go out. Mm-hmm. That's what I do when I'm coming in. I hit the photo of me and Mim.
Doesn't surprise me.
Boom.
Doesn't surprise me at all. Are you okay? Have you fully processed the Vikings spitting up the bit the last 2 weeks?
No, I still haven't. It's very, very difficult. And I want to say, hey, great season. And it was. It was really, really, really fun. I worry about what's going to happen with Sam Darnold. Mm-hmm. I really do. Do we keep him? I feel really bad for the guy because he's awesome. He was really great for us. But, man, I had a hard time. Had a very, very hard time.
I think I think a lot of people are. It's a tough one to sort of let go because it's not just that you lose, but it's the way you lose the last two, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have had it been a game, but it felt like it was out of our control from almost the beginning. So what do you do?
That's true.
Oh, man. Yeah, so, love the Vikes. Can't wait for next year.
We'll see you next week. That's the plan?
Next year?
Well, no, I hope before then. Yeah, well, the Vikes, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in terms
we'll see you next week.
Because there's going to be something going on for sure. Mm-hmm. Kessler on Channel 4 every night at 5, 6, and 10 o'clock. We'll come back, wrap up the show next.
Show wrap brought to you by American Pressure, commercial-grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the bumper-to-bumper show wrap.
It is indeed the final minutes of today's very busy broadcast. I want to thank 3 outstanding guests. If you podcast the show later, Glenn Mason was with us at about 3:30. He came in hot today, no question about that. Luigi was his usual outstanding self, talking Minnesota Wild and tragic Minnesota North Stars history on this date. Louie between 4:30 and 5, and we just wrapped things up with Kessler. Tomorrow, I do want to get a little deeper into your own reaction to the Vikings' loss because you were out yesterday. Obviously, we spent pretty much the entire show on the subject, but I want to get your views on how you took it, how you processed it. That'll be part of tomorrow's program, as well as, we hope, Sean Salisbury and the return I mean, what a great opportunity for Dr. Dan's
There's a lot
inbox
there.
entries. And you could text Gaardsy or email Gaardsy tonight with some of your letters, jg@kfan.com, or even in the morning. I'll remind you via Twitter, via X tomorrow as well. Fan on Demand is going to follow us tonight, and then Minnesota.
Think about that. Fan on Demand.
Yeah, that's it. There's no Vikings Uncensored.
There's no Vikings
There's
X's
no
and O's.
Skull Stories.
No chats with KOC and PA.
It's over. It's
going
it's
over
over.
all the
It's
great plays.
Remarkable.
Every blade of grass. None of it.
Wild Edmonton tonight on the Fan, and if you're interested in Timberwolves, they will be on the Timberwolves channel. Late start, second game of the national television doubleheader. The Wolves hosting the Golden State Warriors of Santa Clara.
Extended Wild coverage with Kevin Fallness at 7 o'clock.
Really? That's when it starts.
He texted to let me know.
Okay, good to know.
That was listed as TBA on our schedule in here.
All right,
They
fair
fill
enough.
it with Fallness.
I mentioned earlier in the program, for your Minnesota Timberwolves fans, we have been a very ordinary home team this year. We've already lost almost as many games as we lost all of last season. The Wolves last year at home were 30-11 in the regular season. They sit tonight at 10-8. Now, not that different than their road record, but the point is they were a very strong home team. It felt like teams had to run the gauntlet here a year ago. Nothing could be further from the truth so far this season. So we'll see if they try to start getting something going at home on a more regular basis. Not to mention the fact that they've got games coming up with the Knicks, who may or may not have Karl Anthony Towns, who's dealing with a thumb injury. And then it's the best team in basketball from a record standpoint, right? The Cleveland Cavaliers.
Saturday night in the city.
Remarkably effective season for them. And, they made a head coaching change that I think seemed to open the door offensively a little bit. Changed them from a decent offensive team to a much better one. Even though, who's coaching Detroit now? Former Cleveland coach.
It's JB.
Our guy, JB.
Yeah.
And you can't argue with the job he's done there. I think it falls into the classification of, well, maybe he took Cleveland as far as he could. Maybe they needed a fresh voice. Maybe they need another coach to take a fresh look at all the same players. Because there's definitely been a change there, but nobody's complaining about what's happened in Detroit, where they've been battling injuries, but nevertheless have become, for the first time in forever, respectable.
A tough out.
Yeah, that's exactly, including they beat us, right, in our last game there.
Yes, they did.
As well. So that's what we got coming up. I had something else for you. What was it? I cannot recall.
I meant to tell you this. So go ahead.
No, you go.
No, it was about the Wolves because I was watching the Saturday night game against Memphis that we melted down, right, and just completely crumbled.
Yes.
Really entertaining game,
Yes.
and then it just becomes infuriating.
Terrible finish. Really good last possession.
But they're doing the post game on, what is it now, FanDuel? Mm-hmm. And our guy Grady and Jim Pete, and then Marnie got into it, said something along the lines of, well, in a couple of days we'll be in Washington and something, and, well, it's because they're the Wizards, like basically saying it's loser-proof, which it ended up being. But I sat there and I go, how can we be this haughty right now?
Can't right now.
And it was a meat grinder.
For 3 quarters, it was an embarrassment.
And they pulled away.
Yeah,
I get it. And had 40-something. But I'm watching it, flipping back and forth, like you said, with the Vikings, and I'm going, the curse of Grady. Come on, Michael. I know you haven't been here that long, but come on. You can't do that with this team.
That's not yet. We haven't seen any sign of it, even with the change in the starting lineup, which may help. I think, by the way, Dilly is close to coming back, right? Now, I don't know if he's ever going to get a chance to play under this head coach, but that's another story for another day. Now that we're in the abyss, I'm going to work on Tim Conley. Obviously, we have Mike Conley every few weeks, but I'd like to get Tim Conley. We've not had him on since the season began. So,
Billy Guerin soon.
And Billy Guerin's due soon as well, and there's some A-section stuff that we're going to try to address. In fact, I had another bumper seal of approval, but we went with the late breaking one. Anytime we can find somebody of note who's ripping Twins ownership, that's red meat to this show. And we ain't gonna apologize for taking full advantage of it and exploiting it. And in this case, that was
AJ,
the candid commentary of one AJ Pierzynski on with our guy Aaron Gleeman. Correct?
Yes, Gleeman was a guest on his show.
Exactly right. Enjoy the evening. Try to stay warm, and we will talk to you tomorrow beginning at 3.
The stories a stadium could tell.
Change the face. Be happy. Enjoy it.